Yo, what is going on everybody? Maximizing here, and today we are going to be looking at one of the strongest hunter builds for PvE I think I've ever seen. It takes some of the strongest aspects, no pun intended, for Void 3.0 on Hunter and amplifies them to 11 by taking advantage of some of the new mods on the seasonal artifact. I've been build crafting in Destiny 2 ever since Season of the Worthy when Warmind cells were introduced. However, this is going to be my first ever video going over a build, so please let me know how I did in the comments down below. So let's get the hard part out of the way. I'm sure many people are wondering, why is this idiot running a glaive for an endgame PvE build? I, like many of you, crafted my glaive day 1 of Witch Queen, tried it out in the campaign, and after 1 or 2 missions said this thing sucks and tossed it in the dismantle bin. But I promise you, the glaive synergy with this build is essential thanks to the artifact mod this season called Suppressing Glaive, which states damaging combatants with the glaive suppresses them, preventing them from using abilities for a short time. What it fails to mention is that while an enemy is suppressed, they are essentially blinded. Just like blinding nades, they stop shooting, they move slowly, and they're effectively CC'd. On top of this, the new Hunter Void 3.0 aspect Stylish Executioner grants you invisibility whenever you kill a weakened, volatile, or suppressed target, meaning yes, you can go invisible just by getting a kill with the glaive, since the glaive is suppressing targets, which is pretty damn strong. While this was my initial reasoning for making this build, I can assure you it only gets stronger from here. So going over the other aspects and fragments of this build, we have Trapper's Ambush, which is the Void Shatter Dive equivalent we saw in the trailers. The aspect states, activate Quick Fall to spend your melee charge and quickly dive to the ground, creating a large smoke cloud on impact. Enemies caught in the smoke cloud are weakened, and allies caught in it go invisible. And then of course the passive of the aspect just makes it so your smoke bombs make allies go invisible, just like Bottom Tree Night Stalker did before. Now for the fragments. First we have Echo of Exchange, melee final blows grant grenade energy, and yes, the glaive melee kills count for this. It's also extremely generous. I know I'm rocking high discipline, so I'm not sure if that has anything to play in with the refund, but every time I throw my grenade, I just need a handful of kills with the glaive to fully refund my grenade with this fragment. The next one is Echo of Domineering. After suppressing a target, you gain greatly increased mobility, which is going to compensate for us not having 100 mobility to get our dodge back faster, and it also reloads our equipped weapon from reserves, which in this case is our glaive. And finally, Echo of Expulsion. Void ability final blows cause targets to explode. This one I really just have for ad clear and a stat bump to the intellect. It isn't really essential to the build if any of you would like to swap it out for something else. Alternatively, another fragment you could rock in place of this is Echo of Leeching, which states upon melee final blows, it will start health regeneration for you and nearby allies, but I personally prefer the other one just because my grenade can ad clear extremely well. And lastly, before we leave the subclass, I definitely recommend using Mobius Quiver for the super, simply because it does like 200k DPS, and if you're wanting to use a super for boss DPS in most activities, this is definitely your go-to. Now that the subclass is out of the way, let's quickly go over armor and mods. First off, the exotic we're running with this is Omnioculus, just because the 2 smoke bomb charges can come in handy in more places than 1. Of course, it can make you and your allies invisible, but you also get damage resistance × 4 while invisible with Omnioculus, which is the highest in the game, I believe. Base smoke bombs can also weaken targets now with the Void 3.0 update, making them a 15% debuff to any enemy, which can definitely come in handy. Our exotic weapon we're rocking is Gjallarhorn, of course, because it's simply the best exotic weapon in the game in my opinion. You'll be using your glaive and kinetic weapon for the majority of minor and major ad clears, so having Gjallarhorn for bosses definitely comes in handy. As for the roll on the glaive, I'm using Threat Detector and Frenzy. I really wish that you could get Surrounded on this thing in the 4th column. I feel like Threat Detector and Surrounded with a Surrounded spec mod would have complemented each other really nicely, but Frenzy is also nice too, especially if you upgrade it to the Enhanced Frenzy trait. Enhanced Frenzy gives you a little extra time, about a second or 2 before Frenzy wears off when you're out of combat, giving you some more time to regen your health while invisible and keep that Frenzy perk going. The origin trait of the Enigma I'd like to quickly mention is Psycho Hack. A few people that I've talked to actually didn't know what it meant when enemies glow red when you hit them with the glaive a few times. This is actually the Psycho Hack origin trait in action. The trait states that sustained damage from this weapon lowers the target's damage output for a short duration. So when you see an enemy glowing red after hitting them a few times with your glaive, it means they are going to deal less damage to you for as long as they are glowing red. Now quickly going over armor mods, let me quickly mention that thanks to the artifact this season, you're actually able to rock all 3 champion types with this build, so let's get that out of the way first. We've got Unstoppable Glaive and Anti-Barrier Scout Rifle on the arms, then on the cloak we've got Overload Void Grenades. For the rest of the mods, we have Elemental Armaments on the helmet, so we can create the Void Wells with our glaive, Font of Might, so picking up that Void Well will grant us bonus damage to our glaive, and I should clarify that it only applies to the Void Shot, not the glaive melee attack. We have Radiant Light and Powerful Friends on the chest and legs. I personally just like these for the stat boost, but they're not necessary at all. You can definitely plug in whatever mods you'd like there. And finally on the cloak, we've got some important mods here. Suppressing Glaive is the mod that makes this entire build possible. Definitely make sure you have this thing on. And then of course I have Well of Tenacity too. This mod is basically the new Protective Light. When Witch Queen launched, Protective Light was nerfed from 50% reduction down to a 10% damage reduction, and Well of Tenacity was buffed from a 10% damage reduction up to a 50% damage reduction. They absolutely neuter Protective Light by nerfing Taking Charge and making your weapons no longer spawn Orbs of Light without the helmet mod, as well as swapping the effects of Well of Tenacity with Protective Light. So honestly, I don't think Protective Light is the play anymore, and honestly, Well of Tenacity isn't that great either, since it only activates immediately upon picking up a Void Well and only lasts for 5 seconds, whereas Protective Light would have only activated that damage resistant when you needed it while on low health. So honestly, later this season, we might find some way better mods than the ones I have here. Finally, the stats I'm running with this build are 80 mobility, of course, to get our dodge back faster in under 20 seconds, to refresh our smoke grenade with Gambler's dodge if we need it. 30 resilience, just because that's the lowest I'm willing to go with any character when it comes to resilience. Anything lower than 30 and I can really tell the difference. 100 recovery is what I run for any activity. I never take it lower than that. I could definitely see people argue for 70 or 80 recovery, since that's what will guarantee you a full health recharge with around 6 seconds of invisibility, but I just prefer 100 personally. 90 discipline so we can throw grenades for a big group ad clear. 50 intellect just to meet it in a sweet spot, and of course 60 strength, which could be a bit higher. I might sacrifice some recovery for higher strength in the future, but right now it feels alright with Omnioculus because it gives me 2 charges and I can always dodge to recharge a melee as well. Just a few more things I wanted to quickly mention before the end of the video. They're just a few tips and tricks I want you all to be aware of with this build. Firstly, the new Spoke Bomb with Void 3.0 has insane range when it comes to making your allies invisible. You can see me using it here with a few of my buddies, and it had a pretty wide radius where it'll reach them. Secondly, this one is kind of unfortunate, but I can see why Bungie did this. You cannot use your Smoke Bomb while wielding a glaive. It sucks, I know, but if Bungie allowed us to use melee abilities while using the glaive, I don't even want to imagine how hard that would be to balance with some of the other classes. You can, however, use the Quickfall ability while wielding a glaive to make you and your allies invisible. However, that brings me to some unfortunate news I came across while messing around with this build. I think this is just some kind of bug that I hope will get fixed in the future, but Omnioculus is supposed to refund your melee energy when you make teammates go invisible with a Smoke Bomb, 50% with one teammate, and a full 100% charge if you make 2 teammates invisible. However, because the glaive's melee attack takes a spot of your Smoke Bomb, if you use the Quickfall ability while wielding a glaive to make you and your allies invisible, it will give you no melee energy back. So essentially, until this is fixed, hopefully the only workaround is to swap to your kinetic or heavy weapon just before making your allies invisible to get that full refunded energy. There is, of course, no downside to just using your Quickfall ability with your glaive out in solo play, which I do a fair bit when I'm in sticky situations when I need to go invisible instantly. Now, oddly enough, you can still get your melee charge back from dodging while wielding a glaive, which is why I think this is most likely a bug that Bungie will fix in the future. It doesn't make much sense why they would allow us to get our melee back from dodging with the glaive out, but not the Omnioculus perk. Lastly, and this one is an insanely overpowered bug that I think will be fixed in the future, you can be permanently invisible 24/7 while killing enemies by just spamming the melee attack with the glaive. Shout out to Mactix for making this known recently, but yeah, just like I said, you can literally be invisible 24/7 and keep killing enemies and not break invisibility ever if you just spam the glaive melee button. As long as you kill an enemy within that 7 seconds of invisibility, you will refresh the invisibility and stay invisible the entire time. It's something to do with the game thinking that you're in the grace period of the invisibility still, since it's a long extended melee attack, but I just wanted to make this known so you can have fun with it until it's patched. Regardless, that's essentially the build, and I think the synergy between Suppressing Glaive mod and the aspects and fragments with Void 3.0 Hunter are insane. A lot of the other combat mods I had on here were just small benefits to the neutral game of the build, but I can see some smarter people than me slotting in some better mods and making this build even better. And if those smarter people are some of you watching this video right now, let me and others know down in the comments. I'd love to hear what you come up with. Before I let you all go, I'd like to quickly mention that I'm live on Twitch pretty regularly over at twitch.tv/IMaximizing. Link to that will be down in the description of this video as always. I'd really appreciate you all coming out to the stream to talk builds or anything else Destiny related. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. But until then, this has been Max. Peace.